everybody. We're back for another Parent Pivot podcast. I am one of your hosts, Steve Cummings.
And I am Julia Cummings.
And we're here at the end of February. We're like, can you believe we've blinked and, a sixth of the year has gone by. And so here we are coming back to you. So we had a fun weekend. We drove to Birmingham, Alabama.
Yeah.
And we partook. We were
participated.
Yeah, it was all. We've all gone to conferences, and you've always gone and had speakers and gone to breakout sessions, and then you've had exhibitors and things like that. And I've always, we've always been on the attendee side of things,
or serving side.
Yeah, or the serving side. So this was actually a first for us.
Yeah.
We were on the other side of the table. We were on the other side of the microphone, and it felt exhilarating for me. I know I'm the extrovert and I'm meeting people. They're walking up to our Parent Pivot podcast table and they're like, hey, what do you guys do? And we told them and they were like, oh, wow. It had a lot of good conversations. Mm-hmm. I remember one couple from Anchorage, Alaska, we talked to, we got to pray with them. That was kind of cool. And then we got to do a couple breakout sessions.
Yeah.
And even recorded our first time of ever recording in a studio.
Which was interesting. Was a little unnerving for me. I didn't like that.
Yeah. So, there was over what they said 8,000 or 9,000 people that were going to be watching this. Is that right?
I think they said 7.
7 on the online side of things. Yeah. Anyway, so that was fun to do, and we enjoyed sharing what we share with you guys every week on the Parent Pivot podcast with folks, and just really seeing faces in front of us.
Yeah.
I think that's where I felt more connected and rejuvenated, because I don't get to see your face. I'm talking to my screen. You're watching me either on YouTube or you're listening to me on your podcast app on your phone or laptop, and so I get energized by connection.
Yeah, and I've been trying to cocoon for the last day to rejuvenate myself, because I came off being sick last week.
Yes.
Steve did the podcast by himself. I came off being sick, and then we went on this thing, and now I'm back home and in the full swing of things again. So I'm a little tired.
All that to say, we're here to help parents pivot some more.
Yes.
From parent to partner, and we're ready for the next topic. What do you have in mind?
So one of the things that we talked about on our at the conference that I, as we were doing our talk, I thought, I need to expand on that on our podcast. And it is about, I was talking about how you really need to know and understand yourself and where things come from, and triggers specifically. So excuse me again. So I thought that I might share a couple of stories about my own life that might kind of give you a bigger picture of what I'm talking about. Because a lot of times we go, oh yeah, I went through this thing or went through that thing. So in my own life, bear with me with my stories. In my own life, I'm the youngest of 5 kids. And if I were to choose like an adjective to describe how I felt all the time growing up, would be invisible, an inconvenience. Just I felt that way, and then I worked at it. So I worked really hard at not being noticed and not wanting to be noticed. And my life was pretty much like, by the time my teenage years came, I would come home and I'd go into my room. I just, I didn't really interact with anyone. When my brother and sister were there that are right next to me, I would interact with them.
Can I just pause? I think it would be helpful to understand that there was 3 years difference between every sibling.
Right. So between me and the oldest was 12 years.
Yeah. Right. And
so like my oldest brother got married when I was 10.
There you go.
Yeah.
That's helpful to understand. It gives you a better perspective to understand why you would feel that way. So he's off to high school, or you're not even in high school yet. He's already off to college.
I was 6 when he left for college.
There you go. So yeah.
So, and then, my second oldest brother, he went away to school too. My sister hung around a little more. My next brother hung around a little more. So the 3 of us were kind of in and out. But I was very much, and this is very typical of a youngest child who has watched everybody leave, there is a certain amount of abandonment that you feel, that everybody has left you and you're left alone. Aside from that, the dynamic in my home was my mom was very much a pleaser to my dad. And so her work was always pleasing. It was pleasing my dad or pleasing us kids or whatever. So there were just a lot of times that I just felt very forgotten. I want to tell this one story, and not because it's a big deal. I don't think my brother ever listens to the podcast, but I don't want this to become a big deal if I tell this story. So anyway, I want to tell this story because this story kind of gives you an idea of why I might be triggered later. So there was like I said, my oldest brother was married when I was 10. And after they were married, they lived not far away. And around Christmas time, all of us kids would go hang out at their house and we'd help them decorate their tree. My sister-in-law had a tree full of angels. There was this one angel that, as a joke, this one night, I picked up and I said, "Oh my gosh, this looks like Paul Williams." Now, if none of you know who Paul Williams is, he was an entertainer in the 70s, and you can look him up.
He was a short blonde guy.
He was just this little short,
yeah.
blonde, funky looking guy.
Yeah.
Now, my brother will tell you that he's the one that said that. And not that this is a big deal, but the reason why I remember it so vividly is because my brother was, and still is, he's the guy that gets all the attention. He's very funny. He's very dynamic. He's a charmer. He's an extrovert. He's just the kind that everybody loves. And he was just always funny. So he always kept us laughing. So in this moment, I said this, and of course my brother took hold of that and started dancing around, acting like Paul Williams. It was all very funny. So it was a very funny memory. The part that my brother remembers is that he's the one that said it. But for me, the reason why it's so vivid is because in that moment, I felt seen. In that moment, I felt like, oh my gosh, I did something funny like my brother. And then my brother took it and made it funnier. So I remember it a certain way. My brother remembers it a different way. It doesn't matter. It's not the story that matters. It's the way that I felt.
Right.
So the overwhelming feeling of growing up and feeling invisible or whatever, in that moment, I didn't feel that.
Right.
So fast forward, and I'm going to fast forward, and this is something Steve doesn't even know yet. Fast forward to this weekend. We did this seminar. We had asked somebody to take some pictures of us. And now he knows what I'm going to say.
When you tap on the photo, you can...
It doesn't matter. Anyway,
whatever.
So in these photos, all of the photos look like just Steve was teaching, and I was standing to the side looking at him. Aren't they all like that, pretty much? There's not one where I look animated and I'm teaching.
By yourself?
By myself.
Correct.
Yeah. There's
yes.
not one where you're looking at me while I'm teaching. So anyway, so when I got those photos, again, it's not that it matters because I don't need to be the center of attention and all of that. But what happened was all of the triggers from my childhood that tell Julia, you are insignificant, you're invisible, you blah, 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 blah. Seeing those.
Someone else steals your thunder.
Yes. So I'm looking at those pictures and all of those triggers come back. So I really had to process that, like on the way home.
You did a very good job because I didn't really know that.
You didn't know that I was processing that specifically.
I just knew not to talk to you.
Yeah, because I was tired. So I was decompressing on our drive home, which is normal. Steve would feel like, okay, Julie needs to decompress. But really, I was doing a lot of self-talk and things like that at processing that.
You did a good job of hitting the pause button is what
Yeah.
and we talked about that in our breakout session. You hit the pause button unbeknownst to me.
Yeah.
And you pause to process all that, to say, I'm in a different space. This was a different circumstance.
Right.
So
the reason why I tell those two stories is one is childhood, one's adulthood. And you can see where the triggers come from. I'm aware of them. I can talk to myself about them. I can talk to the Lord about them, and I can come through that okay. So when I say to all of you out there in the audience that you really need to know yourself, you need to know what those things are that trigger you, because what could have happened was I look at those photos and I lose it. I get mad. And Steve doesn't know why. He would be saying, well, you were there. What's the big deal? Actually, I don't know if that he'd say that. But, in a normal conversation.
I'm shaking my head no as you listen.
Those things might happen with any couple or any parent-child or whatever. But the point is we get triggered in ways that we don't know. And if we don't know ourselves well enough, we don't know what we faced in our childhood and what the messages are that we give ourselves, we are going to find ourselves in conversations that get us in a jam, that are reactionary, and where we have not hit the pause button.
It's going to happen again.
Yes.
It'll happen again. It's not the last time that this will happen to you. It will happen again.
Nope.
But because you are aware that that's a wound of yours, I would say it's one of your main wounds.
Yeah.
And I know that as a husband, I've been dealing with it for almost 37 years here in a couple more months.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if I was aware of it in our first year of marriage, but we talked a lot about it. So I know that about her. So when I see things or feel things, I may come out of one going, okay, how are you doing? Because I'm going to realize that. But you've gotten to the point where you're not reacting out of that, which fractures other relationships. You're not reacting out of it in front of our kids. Mm-hmm. If anything, it's only I that know. Only me. What's the correct grammar there?
Only I know about.
Only I know about that. It was nice not having her on last week's podcast because I didn't have to have a correction of my grammar. Missed you, sweetie. Because then I can put myself in that space and kind of feel that with you. But yes, I mean, we talked a lot about being aware. All those things beneath like an iceberg. It's everything beneath the surface of the water. And that goes for adult kids, because we were talking to grandparents who were caring for elderly parents and adult kids, and we said nothing about their specific situation.
No.
We said, hey, everybody that we come into, I mean, we can go order our food at the restaurant, and the server's acting weird or whatnot, and we take it personally, like, I'm paying for this meal and you're acting like a jerk. There's stuff going on beneath the surface. They could have just been triggered by something. They may have gotten stiffed for a tip. Mm-hmm. And now they're talking to me and I'm going, why aren't if I don't understand and give people grace and acceptance and believe the best about them, I got the same thing happening with me.
Right.
And it's what I'm hearing you saying is, if we want to improve our relationship with our adult kids and our grandkids and our elderly parents, we only can control our response.
Right.
And triggers will happen. I mean, maybe not every day, but and I guarantee you they're going to happen with elderly parents. I mean, I think my parents listen to the podcast. So Mom and Dad, thank you for being able to say, go ahead and share what you need to share on that. I don't judge or condemn them for the things that have happened, whatever. They understand that, and we've made peace with that. But there are just dynamics that were in place that I'm able to talk about and share that with you. And they know I love them, and I call them every once in a while and things. But it's super helpful to be aware of those and hit that pause button like you did.
Yeah. And, we talked also a lot about ownership and owning your own stuff. And that would also be a situation where I have to own my own stuff, because it would have been easy to blame it on somebody else, or to tell Steve, you stole my thunder, or to whatever it is.
And by the
it
way,
may not be reality even. It's just because of my triggers, because of what I tell myself, that suddenly I'm telling myself something about this situation that may not be reality at all.
And this Parent Pivot podcast has all of Julia's DNA and imprint all over it. In fact, I must have told this story over and over as people came up to us at our podcast table, that my wife read Jim Burns' book, and some people knew that, some didn't. I said she gave it to, they went through it in her Bible study at church, happened to have Randy Pope's wife lead that one. Carol Pope goes into the big giant church library, whatever. And then for the next year, Julia bugs me about doing a podcast that I did not want to do.
Yeah.
And so this podcast is all you. That's why I start off and going, what are we talking about today, sweetie? So yes, I did not tell the person taking pictures, make sure you get some of just Julia, some of just me, us together. I just said, could you take some pictures, just because our daughter, who's our marketing social media director, she's bugging me, Dad, we need pictures.
Get pictures so
pictures,
we can put them on social media. Yeah.
So, but even stuff that wasn't meant for harm.
Right. It's just my interpretation. But
you got that lens. You have that lens that I'm invisible. Right. I don't matter. I'm not important. Someone will always steal my thunder. That all of a sudden went like a kaleidoscope and went shift right in front of your eyes.
Yeah.
And you didn't expect it.
Right.
And you saw life through that lens.
And that's the problem with triggers, is you never know when they're going to come or when they're going to hit you. They just do. And so to be aware of them, then when they do hit you out of the blue and you feel like you've been hit by a Mack truck on some level, you can go, oh, that's that trigger. Let me think that through.
Right.
Hit the pause button and think it through and talk it through. If you have a therapist, talk it through with the Lord. Talk it through with your spouse. I can talk about these things with you, and that's great. But if I had just reacted and not owned that stuff as my own, it could have been very different.
And being on this side of you, it's like, oh, here we go again. I could easily have gone like, she could shut down. She could say, I don't want to talk. She could cry, and you've done those things before.
I have,
but you've gotten real good at it. What I wanted to mention about this is that's what happens. But we have to remember, like even Julia's wound of I'm invisible, that comes from the pit of hell, and it's a lie because she's not invisible. Right. And we can all start to believe those from our normal self. Our normal self is building a lens, a protective lens around our worldview, our family, everything, to protect our hearts against these things that hurt, that are coming at us. That's our normal self. When we come to Christ and he gives us a new identity, and we are transformed and we become beloved sons and beloved daughters, it feels good. It's like, I'm accepted. I'm not invisible. I'm fully loved. And the problem in a 24-hour period is we can bounce back and forth. Absolutely. Because the trigger takes us back to our normal self. And that's why the pause button is so important, to be able to say, wait a minute, what just happened?
Right.
I don't believe that. I'm feeling it strongly. And I need to step back and going, okay, I see what happened. So part of this is a spiritual attack. And things. And we need to be able to see that, call it what it is, and actually speak truth over Satan and his minions, to saying, get out of here. You don't belong in my house. You don't belong in my attic. You don't belong anywhere on this property. You don't belong in my heart and my head. And we might have to speak that out quite a few times.
Yeah. And what I would say is speaking out loud. It doesn't matter if you're a believer or not.
It seems weird.
But speaking truth out loud is very important. Yeah. So let's say I'm a person, and I say this to clients all the time. Let's say I have a person that's struggling with anxiety or depression. If they start saying to me, well, I'm depressed, I'm depressed, I'm depressed, I'm depressed, they're saying that out loud and owning it over and over and over again. So I will often challenge someone to start shifting the way they say that into, right now, I'm struggling with depression, as opposed to, this is what I am, this is who I am, this is, and owning those labels. It's right now I'm just struggling with this, and I want to get through
Yeah.
it.
They're choosing to believe that lie, and as you keep speaking that over, you're basically reinforcing that.
Yes.
And what we want to say is that's not necessarily true. You can feel depressed in a moment or for some time,
Yeah,
but
you
that's
can be
not who you
clinically
are.
depressed.
And it can be like, I'm battling depression.
Right. I don't know that we've ever talked about this, about going to the mirror.
Oh,
Have
no,
we ever talked
we
about
haven't.
that? So this is an assignment for all of you. If this is something that resonates with you, and even if it doesn't, I would say give it a whirl.
Side note, didn't come from us. We actually learned this from our kids.
We learned this from our kids.
Our adult kids.
Yeah. Go and get yourself some Post-it notes.
Yep.
And on those Post-it notes, I want you to write, and if you can fill out every Post-it note, all the better.
That's a lot.
It's a lot. It's going to take a while to do this. But to post around on your mirror statements that you can say out loud to yourself in front of the mirror and look at yourself. You can say, I am beautiful. I am smart. I am worthy. I am important. I have something to say.
I matter.
I matter.
I'm enough.
I'm enough. I'm a beloved daughter, a beloved son. I am a great mother, a great father. I am a great friend. I am a great daughter, son. Any of those things.
I'm considerate. I'm compassionate.
Yeah, any qualities. And you might even ask your loved ones, can you think of some things to describe me that I can put on my mirror?
Yeah.
Then what you do is you go to that mirror and you say them. You say them
out loud.
Out loud. And if you remember them driving in the car and you're having a moment in your car, say them out loud. The more you say them and see them on your mirror and say them over and over again, the more you will remember them. But say them out loud. There is power in saying things out loud.
Yes. Words matter.
Words matter.
And we get the negative words that come into our head that are not true. And we need to recognize them and hit the pause button, because they do not come from the Holy Spirit. They come from our, like I said, our mindset and our worldview that we use to protect our heart and our mind, because things that were done, that we saw, that we experienced, that were said to us, hurt us. And if it's said more than once, we've experienced more than once, then we start believing it. And that's even, we've taken it too far. What you're saying is, you're not invisible.
Yeah, no, I'm not invisible. I oftentimes believe it.
Can you feel invisible?
Yes, I can feel invisible, but that doesn't mean that I am.
And it passes, because basically what happened was you got triggered, you went to your normal self, you took a step back, you processed, it passed, and you knew who you are, and you know that you're not invisible.
Yeah. And
that's really what we want to help coach and mentor y'all into doing about this. That's why we wanted to talk about this today.
Yeah. And I want, we always say we do this podcast in real time with authentic things that are happening with us. And so I wanted to share that while it was fresh in my head and I was being authentic about who I am, and that I don't have my act together, and I am not perfect, and I have not figured all of this out, and I am human, and humans believe very human things about themselves and others. So if we can get you where you are doing this in a healthy way, where you can know these things about yourself, what this will offer your adult children is a much healthier you. And they are watching you. They see you. They see how you're handling things. They see if you're changing or you're not changing. And they will take note that you have changed the way you are operating or thinking, or, gosh, when I said this, usually my mom or dad would have done this. They didn't react. Right. They actually were okay and listened and had a good response or whatever. So this will enable you to have much healthier relationships.
Okay. For the record, I pulled up on my phone. Those of you who are watching on YouTube, let's see if I can show that there. There's a photo. And you know what? That's us teaching our breakout session. I remember telling our ambassador that I was Italian and I used my hands. So when she saw my hands move, that probably signaled to her to take a picture. But there you are looking at me as I talk, but clearly she spoke probably more than I did.
No, I didn't.
During the session. Anyway, but you're in the photo.
Steve always has more words than I do.
That's true. You need to be quiet.
It's the extrovert, introvert.
I know, but you're in the photo.
I'm in the photo.
You're in the photo.
I'm not denying that.
Right.
Yeah.
So what else? Anything else?
No, that was really like my topic for the day.
Yeah. And one thing I really enjoyed too that's come out of that, we're actually starting to get some feedback. Folks are taking advantage of our relationship coaching offer. As we spoke to those folks, we said, you know what? Not everybody needs to be in therapy for 3-6 months. Those are kind of more for intense needs, like we talked about depression, anxiety.
Well, everybody can use it. I'm not going to deny that.
Right.
But what we'd like to offer is a succinct 3 sessions to offer you for the first one would be getting to know you. The second one would be dealing with your issue and hopefully get you prepared, like if you had to have a card conversation or something. And the third one would be the follow-up to that. And see how it's all
around
going.
Kind of a related specific relationship issue.
Yes.
This particular adult son or daughter or whatever, we're in this, and this is how my husband or my wife is going, da, 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 da. So that first session is kind of we need to get to know you, how you see things in life and whatever, and understand the situation. The second one is, okay, let's talk about the more steps that can be taken. And the third one can either be, it can go in 3 consecutive weeks, or it could go, that third one can come later. And if more is needed, we want to put it at the same cost as the other, but it can cost as much as, for 3 sessions, can cost as much as $600. Which is expensive, but you got a lot of podcasts to listen to our hearts. We want to cut that in half to 3 sessions for $299. And you reach us at parentpivotpodcast@gmail.com. We already have people lined up and ready to do that. So we want to help you. We want to take our education, our licensing, our certifications, our experience, and things, and be able to help equip you to basically kind of go through what we just talked about. So it doesn't have to break your bank account and things like that. So that's how you get a hold of us, parentpivotpodcast@gmail.com. And if you're on social media, we would love it if you'd share this podcast on your social media. So if you're on Facebook, Instagram, just say, we love this thing, love this podcast. Hopefully you'll find it helpful too. Rate us, review us, like us, all that good stuff.
Please share us. Yeah.
Anything else?
No. That's pretty much it.
We love being here. We were thinking so much about how this has been a blessing. I had no idea God would take this podcast to where he has. I'm just like, okay, let's do a podcast. And here we are. In fact, we came away from that weekend with like 6 other people that we've lined up for interviews.
Yeah.
Like even on down the road, I'm thinking, well, these are people who are like known authors. I won't spoil it, but known authors. Well, speaking of authors, we have a book coming out.
Oh, yeah.
We forgot to mention that. It's in the middle of being published. I don't even have a copy of it, but I'll share a link in our show notes and things. But we haven't. It's 13 things to build a healthy relationship with your adult child. 13 principles.
The Parent Pivot, 13 principles
It's our first foray into the publishing
and hopefully
world.
it'll be coming out in a couple weeks.
Yeah,
apparently
it's not going to be.
Had some problems with.
Yeah, it's not going to be super expensive either. You'll all be able to afford it and things. And we just like, well, that's awesome. We want it to be more ministry than us making money off of.
It's actually kind of a journal.
Yeah, it's more. Yeah, you get to journal your thoughts.
Yeah,
kind of like the assignment you got from Julia today.
Yeah.
About getting some Post-its and sticking them on the mirror. We want to be interactive in this. We don't want you to just get information and go, okay, that's great, and move on to the next podcast. We really have a desire to help equip you to pivot from parent to partner and be healthy and successful at that, and change your legacy trajectory towards your kids and grandkids for years to come.
Yep.
That's it. We'll be back next week for another Parent Pivot podcast.
Bye.